Okay, I am back with a video reading on Jeffrey Epstein. So, I had to get in on this situation. So, a lot of people already are familiar with this story because his name is all over the news. He recently died in his prison cell and they are ruling it a suicide. But there's a lot of people, including myself, who are very skeptical of the official story because if you know anything about the elite, and he was part of the elite, they operate as a closed system, and if one of them gets out of line, they won't hesitate to basically cancel the check. They won't hesitate to take the person out. So a lot of people are speculating that he was suicided, which means that he was murdered, and it made to look like a suicide. So I'm going to provide my astrological perspective on this situation. So here's the story, and I'll be inserting my astrological comments with each little snippet. So Jeffrey Edward Epstein, born January 20th, 1953, died August 10th, 2019, was an American financier and convicted sex offender. Epstein began his career in finance at the investment bank Bear Stearns before forming his own firm, J. Epstein and Company. Until his conviction for sex crimes in 2008, Epstein was a well-connected multimillionaire who moved among the financial, political, and cultural elite. So this deals with his Jupiter in Taurus. That's the financier part. Trine Chiron and Capricorn. That's his corporation. He may be a Leo rising because that would put Jupiter in the 10th house. But I don't know his birth time, so I'm just speculating. Now, about his birth number, 20 does deal with females, and he's known for basically going after underage girls and being involved in this sex trafficking ring. So 20 can deal with nations, and also 20 can produce awakenings. So he had a few awakenings when he got arrested, but the final awakening is through his death. So that may awaken certain people to what's really going on, or people might become awakened to the fact that there's, some foul play, there's something not right with this whole story. So a lot of people are asking questions, including certain law enforcement officials. Now his life path number is 21. That breaks down to 3. That deals with him being involved in international affairs, but it also points to his political connections. It points to him being very wealthy. And 21 can cause him to act like he is above the law. 21 also leads to excess. Now, when you break those two numbers apart, 2 and 1, 2 represents girls or females, and 1 represents youth or children. So when you put the two together, that can manifest as young girls. Now, in 2005, the Beach police in Florida began investigating Epstein after a parent complained that he molested her 14-year-old daughter. That deals with Jupiter squaring his Leo South Node. So this reading is apropos for Leo season because he got his Leo South Node. He also has Pluto in Leo. Now, his South Node's at the 13th degree of Leo, and that can produce unusual circumstances involving children. Now, the Leo South Node alone points to him having some problems involving children in the most general sense. It can deal with karmic debt involving children. It can deal with a past life where perhaps he was exploiting children and maybe he's just repeating the same behavior in this current lifetime. Now, that 13th degree deals with death, but it can also deal with perversion, willfulness, entitlement, and the 13th degree of Leo in particular can produce extreme ego orientation where the person becomes like a tyrant. And also it can cause somebody to be very much about like alternative forms of sex or even perverted forms of sex. So that Jupiter squaring his Leo South Node, that's like the truth coming out about what he's doing with children. This also points to him being caught up in the justice system. Now, Epstein eventually pleaded guilty and was convicted in a Florida state court in 2008 of soliciting a prostitute and of procuring an underage 18 girl for prostitution. So again, that's Jupiter squaring his Leo South Node, but this also points to his sun being conjoined to Eros in Aquarius. So that sun being conjoined to Eros alone could just make him a sex addict. And then the fact that it's in Aquarius can deal with him being a pervert. His sun is also squaring Saturn and Neptune in Libra. That sun square Saturn in particular can deal with the exploitation of children. Neptune squaring the sun can even deal with kidnapping of children or enslavement of children or young girls in his case. That Neptune square sun also points to him getting locked up, being incarcerated. And Saturn and Neptune are conjoined. So that can often produce a situation where the person has to do some time in jail or in prison. Now, he served 13. That reflects his south node at the 13th degree of Leo, north node at the 13th degree of Aquarius. So he served 13 months in custody with work release as part of a plea deal where federal officials had identified 36 girls as young as 14 years old who had been molested. Epstein had additionally faced allegations from numerous individuals of holding women in sexual slavery, including those underage. So this points to his Mars being conjoined to Venus in Pisces, trine Uranus, and Cancer. That points to him being part of the prostitution ring, also the sexual slavery, but it also points to him having the work release privileges because Uranus is a planet of privilege. Epstein was arrested again on July 6, 2019 on federal charges for sex trafficking of minors in Florida and New York. So again, this is pointing to Jupiter squaring his Leo South node, and it's also squaring his Aquarius North node. That forms a fixed T-square in his chart. And this points to where the truth comes out about the network that he belongs to. So with him getting caught up in the justice system, you could look at this as him becoming a threat to the network because he had a lot of evidence in his possession, which is evident by Jupiter in Taurus. Here's his chart right here. As you can see, he got that Leo South node. That can make him an egomaniac, a narcissist, where he's very willful, and where he has this strong sex drive, where he could even be a sex addict, especially when you take into account that his sun is conjoined to Eros. He also has Pluto in Leo. Pluto is retrograde, which can pertain to a hidden agenda involving children, because Leo rules children. And then the whole sex theme brought about by that Pluto influence. He also hears that Mars and Venus conjunction, so it's a tight conjunction, and here's that trine to Uranus and Cancer. So as you'll see, these trines right here enable him to get away with a lot, enable him to even have privileges while he was locked up. But this also deals with the sex trafficking, as I will get into in a minute. He also has Mercury conjoined Chiron, which can make him very uncompromising, can make him have a cruel and sadistic mindset. Now, the police began a 13-month undercover investigation at Epstein. There's that 13 again. That included a search of his home. The Federal Bureau of Investigation also became involved in the investigation. Subsequently, the police alleged that Epstein had paid several girls to perform sexual acts with him. Interviews with 5 alleged victims and 17 witnesses under oath, a high school transcript, and other items found in Epstein's trash and home allegedly showed that some of the girls involved were under 18. The police search of Epstein's home found 2 hidden cameras and large numbers of photos of girls throughout the house, some of whom the police had interviewed in the course of their investigation. The International Business Times reported that papers filed in 2006 lawsuit alleged that Epstein installed concealed cameras in numerous places on his property to record sexual activity with underage girls by prominent people for criminal purposes such as blackmail. Now, that Mars conjoined to Venus and Pisces, that deals with his collection of photos. Mars and Venus and trine to Uranus and Cancer points to the hidden cameras in his home, but it also points to the private island that he owned. So he would invite some top government officials, other politicians, celebrities, big business people to his private island so that they could have sex with these underage girls. And he had a private jet, and that's indicative of Mars and Venus in trine to Uranus and Cancer. Uranus would represent his private jet, and they even called it the Lolita Express. And Lolita is from this book that was turned into a movie about this young girl that gets turned out or whatever. Now, Epstein allegedly lent girls to powerful people to ingratiate himself with them and also to gain possible blackmail information. In 2015, evidence came to light that one of the powerful men at Epstein's mansion may have been Prince Andrew, Duke of York. This deals with his Aries moon being enshrined to his Leo South Node. That can result in him having close ties with powerful people, including royalty, because Leo rules royalty. So that points to where that Prince Andrew, Duke of York, comes in. Now, if I'm right about his birth time, that would put his moon in the ninth house, which would make sense because he was very much about international affairs. This could deal with him having that island. So, yeah. Now, on June 30th, 2008, after Epstein pleaded guilty to a state charge, one of two, of procuring for prostitution a girl below age 18, he was sentenced to 18 months in prison. While most convicted sex offenders in Florida are sent to state prison, Epstein was instead housed in a private wing of the Palm Beach County Stockade and, according to the sheriff's office, was after 3.5 months allowed to leave the jail on work release for up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. This contravened the sheriff's own policies, requiring a maximum remaining sentence of 10 months and making sex offenders ineligible for the privilege. He was allowed to come and go of specified release hours. Epstein's cell door was left unlocked, and he had access to the turning room where a TV was installed for him before he was moved to the Stockade's previous unstaffed infirmary. So they even staffed the infirmary for him and made it all comfy. Again, this deals with Mars and Venus and Pisces being enshrined to Uranus and Cancer. So this is him having special privileges while incarcerated. The incarcerated part would be the Pisces influence. The privileges would be Uranus. And this is him being able to spend time at home, him being housed in a private wing, having friends, connections in high places. He also has Neptune conjoined to Arcturus and Spica in Libra. So that could deal with him being protected, because those two fixed stars can lead to wealth, but it can also result in being protected even if you are committing crimes. Now, he did get arrested, but as you can see, he was able to be out on work release. He had his cell door unlocked. I mean, this is unbelievable, but with what's in his chart, it makes perfect sense. Now, he worked at the office of a foundation he had created shortly before reporting to jail. He dissolved it after he had served his time. The sheriff's office received $128 from Epstein's nonprofit to pay for the cost of extra services being provided during his work release. So he has Jupiter and Taurus, trine Chiron and Capricorn. That deals with him being able to pay this sheriff's office this money so that he could have these extra services. This just shows you how corrupt law enforcement can be. So Neptune conjoined to Arcturus and Spica and Libra, again, that points to him having that protection. And also, at one point with his business, with his company, he was protecting rich people's investments by looking out for the theft of investments and stuff like that. He was like, what do you call that? Theft protection or whatever. And that can very much deal with Neptune conjoined to Arcturus and Spica as well. So he had these high level connections. He was very rich himself. And like I said, Arcturus and Spica can bring riches. So here's his chart again. That Mercury conjoined to Chiron can cause him to be the exception to the rule. Also, when you take into account Chiron and trine to Jupiter and Taurus, that can deal with him being the exception to the rule because of the amount of money he has and who he could pay off. Now, his office was monitored by permanent deputies whose overtime was paid by Epstein. Again, that's that Jupiter trine Chiron. They were required to wear suits, checked in, welcome guests at the front desk. Later, the sheriff's office said though these guest logs were destroyed per the department's records retention rules, although inexplicably, the stockade visitor logs were not. He was allowed to use his own driver to drive him between jail and his office and other appointments. So that deals with Mercury being conjoined to the asteroid Icarus in his chart. Icarus deals with hiring a driver or where you're allowing someone else to drive. But this conjunction can also result in his death because death is very much associated with Icarus. It could deal with where you end up dying as a result of being cocky, or where you feel like you can accomplish something, but you end up shooting yourself in the foot. Now, his Mercury is also in quincunx to Pluto. So I see this conjunction as him possibly ending up dead as a result of what he knows and the information he has on others. Now, Epstein served almost 13 months, there's that number again, before being released for a year of probation on house arrest until August 2010. While on probation, he was allowed numerous trips on his corporate jet to his residences in Manhattan and the U.S. Virgin Islands. He was allowed long shopping trips and to walk around Palm Beach for exercise. This deals with, again, his Mars and Venus in Pisces, trine Uranus in Cancer. He also had Uranus parallel Phaethon. That deals with his private jet or his corporate jet, because Phaethon is very much like Icarus. They both deal with flying, like a flying chariot, and Uranus deals with aircraft. So this is him having the ability to still get on his private jet, even though he was supposed to be incarcerated. Now, Neptune again, conjoined to Arcturus and Spica, points to him being protected in that respect, even while he's incarcerated. Jupiter trine Chiron again enable him to have the special privileges be the exception to the rule. Now, on July 6, 2019, Epstein was arrested at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey on sex trafficking charges. So that deals with that fixed T-square involving Jupiter and the nodes. So here's Jupiter. As you can see, is squaring his south node. Jupiter is also squaring his north node in Aquarius, which completes a T-square. Now that north node in Aquarius represents the network that he belonged to. Uranus represents the network as well. Now, according to witnesses and sources on the day of his arrest, about a dozen FBI agents forced open the door to his Manhattan townhouse, the Herbert N. Strauss house, with search warrants. The search of his townhouse turned up evidence of sex trafficking and also found hundreds and perhaps thousands of sexually suggestive photographs of fully or partially nude females. Some of the photos were confirmed as those of underage females. In a locked safe, compact discs were found with handwritten labels, including the descriptions young name plus name, Miss Nudes 1, and Girl Pics Nudes. There were also found in the safe $70,000 in cash, 48 diamonds, and a fraudulent Austrian passport, which expired in 1987 and had Epstein's photo but another name. So again, all of this combined, the photos that he has of these girls, the diamonds in the safe, even the fraudulent passport points to Mars and Venus in Pisces, trine Uranus in Cancer. On July 8th, prosecutors with the Public Corruption Unit of the Southern District of New York charged him with sex trafficking and conspiracy to traffic minors for sex. The grand jury indictment alleges that dozens of underage girls were brought into Epstein's mansions for sexual encounters. Now, his moon is in trine with the Leo South Node. I'm not sure how close it is because I don't know what degree his moon is at because I don't know his time of birth. However, I would think this trine would be pretty close, like tight, because he enlisted the help of his former girlfriend named Ghislaine Maxwell, and she was recruiting these young girls for services to him and also members of the elite. So he would throw these parties at his mansion with the help of his former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. And she hasn't been prosecuted, but she is definitely an accomplice. So you could Google her and get some background story on her. She grew up rich. She's the daughter of a billionaire, but her father ended up losing a lot of money. So she felt desperate. I watched this documentary last night about her and Epstein. So she got desperate. So she, saddled up to Epstein, became his girlfriend, and then even after they broke up, they still maintained ties, and then they were colluding together in this sex trafficking ring. So again, the fact that he was throwing these parties, you know, finding these young females, Mars conjoined to Venus can deal with searching and finding young females for these parties that he was throwing for the elite. So again, Mars and Venus trying, Uranus and Cancer enable him to make all this happen. Also points to the private island, the private jet, all that. Now, Judge Kenneth Mara was to decide whether the non-prosecution agreement that protected Epstein from the more serious charges should still stand. Epstein's lawyers urged the court to allow Epstein to post bail, offering to post up to a $600 million bond, including $100 million from his brother Mark, so he could leave jail and submit to house arrest in his New York mansion. Judge Richard M. Berman denied the request on July 18th, saying that Epstein posed a danger to the public and a serious flight risk to avoid prosecution. Now, this is where his privileges ended. Now, this deals with a T-square between his moon, Uranus, and Chiron. This would be a cardinal T-square, which points to the fact that he is a flight risk, especially with Uranus squaring his moon. Now, a little bit more about the moon. So his moon is squared by Chiron and Uranus, and that forms a cardinal T-square. This could cause him to be sociopathic, where he has no respect for people as a whole. He could be misanthropic, where he objectifies females. He could be an unlikable person in general, lacks sensitivity and humaneness, can't emotionally connect with people, no loyalty to anyone but himself because his moon is in Aries, sets people against him, including the network, and that would be represented by Moon Square Uranus in particular. And that judge was right about him being a flight risk because Moon Square Uranus can deal with him basically skirting the law and getting out of Dodge. And this deals with him inflicting wounds upon people, that Moon Square Chiron in particular, especially females. Now, the moon could be at the 13th or 14th degree of Aries, considering his attraction to girls in their early teens. And if I'm right about his birth time, that would put his moon in the 9th house. And that would fit the sex trafficking because Cancer would be ruling the 12th. Cancer on the 12th also fits the island theme as well as the concealed cameras in his home. But again, that's just speculation. Now, these squares can also deal with invasions of others' privacy. And Mars and Venus and Pisces would be in the 8th if he's a Leo rising, and that fits the whole sex trafficking, prostitution, all that. So again, I'm just speculating that he would be a Leo rising, but that would make sense because he is a narcissist, an egomaniac, with that Leo South Node being in the 1st. But don't quote me on that because I don't know his birth time. But this really would fit. That again, like I said, he has Saturn conjoined to Neptune. That can produce someone that has to do time in prison, time in jail. But this also points to him having some very rich clients when you take into account that Neptune is conjoined to Spica and also Arcturus. And this points to, again, him having those clients where he was doing the whole theft protection services. But I think he was stealing from his clients as well. This is the interesting part about him, and it shows that he is a serious egomaniac narcissist. Now, he had a strong interest in eugenics and transhumanism, and that points to his sun being at the 0 degree of Aquarius. He has his Aquarius North Node, and this points to him being very highly intelligent, and he was a calculus and physics teacher before he became a financier. So he was working at a prestigious private school. That also points to that Leo South Node. So predators will gravitate towards those professions where they can be around children, which is exactly what he did. But that Aquarius energy he has also points to him having connections. So he got his first finance job with Bear Stearns through one of the parents of his students. So this shows that he just always had the ability to make these connections with higher ups. Now his sun is squaring Saturn in Libra. Saturn in Libra is Saturn's at the 27th degree of Libra, so that's a dissociative square. Now that Saturn in Libra points to him having legal troubles involving children. The sun represents children, but it also points to where he cannot connect with people on a normal, balanced level due to issues with control. It can also point to him being misanthropic and sociopathic again, like how he has that Uranus and Chiron squaring his moon. It can make him cruel, heartless, evil even, and this points to him creating enemies. Now, Sun square Saturn is a death aspect that can shorten a person's life, so they could end up having a death at, some point where, they don't, it takes away from longevity, basically. Now, he did die at 66, so he was able to live, a pretty, long life. However, age 66 is still rather young when we're talking about death, because, people more than likely expect to live at least till they're like in their 80s or 90s. So Sun square Saturn, the fact that Saturn's in Libra, can deal with death at the hands of an enemy, not suicide. Now, according to various sources, Epstein, beginning in the early 2000s, showed a strong interest in improving the human race through genetic engineering and artificial intelligence, including using his own sperm. Again, this is reinforcing his egomania and the fact that he's this big-time narcissist. He addressed the scientific community at various events and occasions and communicated his fascination with eugenics. It was reported in August 2019 that Epstein had planned to seed the human race with his DNA by impregnating up to 20 women at a time using his New Mexico compound as a baby ranch. This supports my speculation of him being a Leo rising with that Leo South node in the first house. So him wanting to propagate this elite species. Now, where mothers would give birth to his offspring. He was an advocate of cryonics and his own idiosyncratic version of transhumanism, and had said, perhaps in jest, that he intended to have his penis and head frozen. Now, this deals with his sun being opposed to Asclepius. That is a medical asteroid. It can deal with doctors, but it can also deal with where, just like how this is saying, him being very much into eugenics and taking it so seriously that he's even, talking about creating some type of baby ranch. Also, his Pluto is opposed to Niobe. Niobe is an asteroid that deals with taking great pride in one's children, but pride comes before the fall. So Niobe is an asteroid that deals with tragic circumstances involving children. Now, this opposition also has more sinister implications because Niobe could deal with the death of a child. So I'm wondering if Epstein was involved with the murder of a child or children, and that can go along with the territory with sex trafficking because sometimes things go wrong. And it also points to the crisis and trauma he creates through the abuse of children. His sun is also conjoined to Altair. That's a fixed star that can produce sudden but ephemeral fortune. It can cause him to be impulsive. It can create courage within him, but it can also lead to accidents, strong passions, indomitable will, and where he is a dominating character, which he was. So again, that Aquarius energy he's dealing with, that's the eugenics part, where he's all, focused on trying to create this, I guess, this master race or this elite race. But yeah, this just shows that he was a big time egomaniac. That Mercury being in quincunx to Pluto and Leo can point to that as well, where, he just has these weird obsessions about being part of the elite or creating this elite race of children, that whole baby ranch thing. Now, Epstein died of an apparent suicide by hanging on August 10, 2019, while in prison at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City. Prison officials found his body in his cell at 6:30 a.m. 3 weeks previously, he had been found unconscious in his jail cell with injuries to his neck. Now, that right there is very suspicious. Now, the part about the injuries to his neck and also the suspected hanging deals with that fixed T-square involving his Jupiter and the nodes, because his Jupiter is in Taurus. Taurus rules the neck. However, that Aquarius North node shows that more than likely he was not acting alone, especially with that first incident where he got the injuries to the neck, but also perhaps with that suicide situation. And again, Aquarius represents the network. That Aquarius North Node is the network. Now, after that incident, he was placed on suicide watch. That deals with his Mercury being in quincunx to Pluto. Mercury and Pluto are both at the 22nd degree of Capricorn and Leo, respectively. That 22nd degree is about control or be control, or where you are in a submissive position. However, he was not on suicide watch at the time of his death, which ended 12 days before he died, leading some prison experts to express bafflement and shock that he would be taken off suicide watch at such a time in such a high security federal facility like the MCC, nicknamed the Guantanamo of New York. On July 23rd, Epstein was found injured and semi-conscious at 1:30 a.m. on the floor of his cell with marks around his neck that were suspected to be from a suicide attempt or an assault. His cellmate, this is the clincher right here, former New York City police officer Nicholas Tartaglione, who is charged with 4 counts of murder, was questioned about Epstein's condition. So it seems to me like he was an accomplice in this, but this is just speculation on my part. Now, he denied knowledge of what happened. Epstein said he recollected nothing. Now, again, Epstein has Mars conjoined to Venus and Pisces. That can deal with him being drugged or knocked out. Now, according to NBC News, 2 sources said that Epstein might have tried to hang himself. A third said the injuries were not serious and could have been staged, while a fourth source said that an assault by his cellmate had not been ruled out. And this ex-cop that is charged with 4 counts of murder, he really don't have nothing to lose. So they could have created a deal with him like, look, we will release you if you comply with what we need done with this whole Epstein. Now, U.S. Attorney General William Barr ordered an investigation by the Department of Justice Inspector General, in addition to the investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, saying he was appalled by Epstein's death in federal custody. So again, this is Mercury quincunx Pluto. People are suspicious about his death. Epstein was 66 years old. 66 breaks down to 12. 12 is a number of sacrifice victimization. I just thought that was interesting. His death quickly spawned conspiracy theories, with President Trump retweeting them. And this was taken from Wikipedia. Now, here is a bi-wheel with his natal chart in the middle, his death chart on the outside. So I'm going to get into some of his death transits. So on the day that he died, or the day that he was found dead, transiting Saturn was conjoined to his Chiron in Capricorn. Both were at the 15th degree. 15th degree is indicative of others' involvement, because 15 corresponds to Venus. And this can deal with manipulation. So 15 can manifest as manipulation. The Capricorn influence can deal with facing some form of punishment, execution perhaps. Capricorn also represents people in high positions, and it could deal with where some authorities were complicit, including that former police officer. Now, Saturn, transiting Saturn and the South Node are both at the 15th degree on the day that he died, and they are both conjoined to his Chiron in Capricorn. And these Saturn and the South Node are also opposing his Uranus in Cancer, and the North Node is on his Uranus in Cancer. So all of this 15th degree energy, again, that 15th degree is indication that he was not operating alone. Like the whole suicide theme is very suspect because of this 15th degree. Now, you could look at this as perhaps the network sends the Grim Reaper, because Uranus would represent that network. And his Saturn conjoined to the south and transiting Saturn conjoined to the south node is a sign that there were people involved in his death, because that south node can represent a group of people. Now, transiting Pluto was conjoined to his Mercury, not exactly, but it's close enough to bring about one's death. But this also points to federal investigation that he was under. And you could look at this as perhaps murder as a way to silence him. That Capricorn influence points to the silencing. Shutting him up for good, you could look at this transit as also being this whole conspiracy thing. Pluto is opposing the asteroid Diana right now, which could deal with him being the prey, then basically hunting him down, locking him up, and him being the prey, and basically they got him. So I'm really wondering, I'm thinking that him getting locked up was all part of the plot. That was where they could ensure that they could get right to him. Because again, he had all this evidence on some people in high places. Now, you could also look at Pluto on his Mercury as something stopped his breathing, because Mercury rules the lungs. Now, this could also manifest as a cover-up. And since Pluto is retrograde, this shows that Pluto had already crossed over his Mercury, and this could mean that the plan was concocted months or even a few years prior to this actually going down. Now, this Pluto on his Mercury, that transit became exact on February 16th of this year. It became exact again on July 5th of this year after turning retrograde, and it will become exact again post-mortem on December 23rd, 2019. So some more information may come out associated with Epstein regarding some of the people that he was connected to. Now, transiting Pluto also is in quincunx to the Leo South Node. This is about him being exposed through the federal investigation, but it can also show that, again, he wasn't acting of his own free will when it came to the suicide. The transiting ascendant was conjoined to his Pluto. This is him being found dead at 6:30 a.m. Also, transiting Neptune was hovering over his Mars and Venus in Pisces. This points to his incarceration, but this can also point to sacrifice, victimization, poisoning perhaps. Transiting Mercury was squaring his Saturn the day before he died. So this could deal with a change in security guards or correctional officers to ensure that, he could be suicided. And the transiting Sun and Venus and Leo were forming a quincunx to his Venus and Mars and Pisces. This could deal with adjustments being made in terms of his cell conditions or perhaps security. Also, where there was involvement of some of the authorities or someone in power calling the shots, making arrangements so that the whole suicide official story could be manifested. So that's my reading on Jeffrey Epstein. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment in the comments section with any insight that you have, any other details that you learned about recently involving this case. I feel like this is the tip of the iceberg concerning Epstein. More information could come out regarding who else was associated with him. Trump was a confidant of his, as well as the Clintons. So he definitely had some close ties to some higher ups, politicians, big business people. He had a lot of evidence against them because he was engaging in blackmail. So again, while he was protected, because he got out of line, because he had all this evidence that could incriminate some of these higher ups, they had to take him out, in my opinion, as well as a lot of people's opinion. So again, let me know what you think. I'll be back with some more videos. If you would like a reading, you could go to my website at rabina.com. Peace, many blessings, and I am out.